And secondly, we want everyone to leave this session feeling really educated and really informed. If you have a question, please do pop it in the chat. This is our second webinar with Shelburne, and the first one was absolutely amazing. The engagement was brilliant. People came with tons of questions. So don't be afraid if you want to come off mute and ask a question, or if you want to pop it on the chat. We want to make sure you get the most out of it. So with that, I'd like to kick us off by hearing from all of you and to ask the question, what are you hoping to get out of this session? And if you wouldn't mind opening up the chat function and telling us what are you hoping to get? So are you looking for more information on the menstrual cycle, or how to be adaptive when training, or excuse me, how to support your team? Please let us know, and we just want to make sure we can get everything covered. I'll give it a minute or two. I know people are probably thinking about what they would like to get out of stuff. So Barry, and better understanding of how to adapt sessions. That's brilliant, Barry. We'll be going over that a little bit later. So that's excellent. And more information on training and adapting during training to support all girls. Fran, thank you for that as well. That's something we'll also be diving into. Someone supporting daughters to be able to play sport. I just think that's amazing. So brilliant. You're in the right place. More information around training during different stages of the cycle and what should be done. Excellent. How to support my ladies' teams and their needs. Really, really good. So a lot of it is around how to adapt training. And someone's mentioned here that they don't understand the different phases of the cycle. So that's brilliant. It's it's okay that you don't know, and it's brilliant because we're going to cover it. So that's really, really great. A lot there on how to support girls in when you're training them in drills and in food, details on differences between men and women's warm-ups, better support for daughters. Rob here is coaching an under 13s girls team. So all of the above. This is all excellent. So we're going to be really deep diving into this during the session, so we will cover everything. And please do type more into the chat if there's more questions that you have. I see there some questions there saying, are there differences between teenagers and adults? Octavia, you'll probably go into that a little bit later. And then again, more understanding on how we can best help athletes. So really, really good. Thank you so much, everyone, for letting us know. On the agenda, as I mentioned, we're going to do a little bit of introductions now, and we're going to talk all around what you've mentioned in the chat there, how players can empower themselves, how coaches can empower their players, a lot around strength and conditioning, how to optimize performance, coaching and communication, which is a really important one. And then we'll talk through key takeaways at the end, and then we'll leave some more time for questions at the end as well. So I'll start off by introducing myself, and we'll then hand it over to the amazing team from Shelburne Football Club. But as mentioned, my name is Anya Kilkenny. I am the co-founder of Riley Period Care. We supply 100% organic cotton period products that are better for our bodies and better for our planet. Rachel, I'll hand it over to yourself to start the introductions from your side.
Hi everyone, delighted to be here and chatting today for you. So I'm Rachel, so I'm one of the players of the Shelburne women's team. Look, I don't know any kind of sciencey stuff about periods, and I know a lot of people have said like how to adapt train and stuff. Like I don't really know any of that. And look, I'm 36 now. I've had like a period for 20 something years, and I still don't know the ins and outs. But so like it's fine if you don't know. But look, I'm more of a player side, and I just give like a player's perspective what I found kind of works for me. And I've seen some people saying they kind of want to help their young girls play, and look, I've been that young 13, 14-year-old girl who doesn't want to speak about her period, doesn't understand. So I've been there, I've done it all. So I'm just going to kind of give my perspective on it. But again, look, I don't know any sciencey side of stuff, but I'd say like probably 99% of the players that are dealing with don't know either. So I'm probably very much our target market, and I've been through all the experiences that the players that are dealing with now are facing as well.
Brilliant. We'll hand it over to you, Kristen.
Hi, everyone. Delighted to be here. I'm Kristen. I'm one of the community development officers at Shelburne Football Club, and I'm also the women's under-19s National League coach. Just building off what Rachel said, like it took me until I was into my mid-20s, I'd say, to get a very good handle on my cycle. And I'm fairly lucky to have that. Not everybody has a great handle on their cycle, and especially not teenage girls. So when we're looking at how we coach players and how they can adapt to their cycle, they might not even know their cycle as well as as we do, and it took us so long to understand our cycle as well. So we'll keep that in mind as we're discussing how we adapt sessions and how you build the relationships with your players, because there's a chance that they might not be as clued in as we'd ideally like for them to be, because sure, as an adult, I don't even know everything. Pass.
Brilliant. And Octavia?
Hey guys, delighted to be here again for a second time speaking and collaborating along with Riley. So I'm the head of Women's Academy S&C. I've worked with girls from age of under 14 so up to under 19. So I'll be kind of giving my outlook and view on the S&C perspective and how you can adapt sessions, as well as communication and trust being a big part of how the language and barriers are between both adults and teenage girls. So yeah, I'll be doing a deeper dive on that.
Brilliant. I'll leave it to you to kick off all around Shelburne Football Club. Brilliant.
Thanks, Anya. So for Shelburne, we have 6 girls teams, 7 female coaches, and 104 female players. We do hope to increase those numbers next season, but that's where we're at right now. Supporting athletes both on and off the pitch is at the heart of what we do, and today's conversation on menstrual health is an important step in creating a more inclusive sporting environment. We're proud to partner with Riley to open up this discussion, and we're excited to get started. As part of the partnership between Shelburne and Riley have committed to supplying Shelburne FC with period packs for every female team in the academy as an essential part of their training and match day gear. As the women's under-19s manager, I can confirm that we have ours as well. It's in the dressing room on the medical table before every match. It's also in my bag for any training session. And the message to the players is simply, if you need something, just grab it. Riley are also supplying period products to the home of Shelburne FC, Tolka Park. They're available in the women's bathrooms for all of our supporters as well.
Brilliant. Thank you so much. You can probably see my face. I'm just so delighted with this partnership. It's just something that like we're so proud of. So yeah, it's amazing. It's amazing to be working together. For the next couple of minutes, I'm going to introduce everyone to our company, Riley, how we work together and how we work to make better products more accessible to everyone. So to give you a bit of background, myself and my co-founder, Fiona Parfrey, started our business actually nearly 5 years ago off the back of a conversation that we were having about getting our periods and what period care was available to us. And our ask was really simple. We wanted period care that was free of toxins, free of chlorine bleach, and that was not harmful to the environment, which sounds pretty simple when you say it like that. But we were wrong. We couldn't find anything on the market that ticked all the boxes. And then having done a deep dive into a lot of research on mainstream period care. And when I talk about mainstream period care, I talk about period care that you might buy off the local shelf the shelf in your local Boots or your local Tesco. And the reality is that these can often contain a lot of chemicals. They can often be very damaging to the environment. And we couldn't find anything that used only 100% organic cotton. So we felt compelled to do something about it. And as I mentioned, nearly 5 years ago, Riley was born. And what really began as a fight against toxic products became a movement to help women thrive through better care, better access, and better education. So our mission with this, excuse me, what a time to get something caught in my throat. Our mission is simple. We fundamentally believe that period care is a basic human right and that period products should be treated in the exact same way as toilet paper and be readily available in every single bathroom that you walk into. And with this mission, it's evolved so much. It's evolved into empowering women and empowering women in every single aspect, in work, in life, and in shaping change. And what we found is every single woman is influential. And it's not defined by title and it's not defined by fame. It's defined by the impact a woman has on the world around her. And that's in workplaces, it's in family life, it's in sports, it's in schools, and it's in communities. So really our mission is to recognize, support, and equip women in all their spheres of influence through better health, access, and education. With this, we are incredibly passionate about having an impact in sport. It's something we've done since our very early days in partnering to make an impact in sport, and it's something that changing. We really want to have an impact in changing the stats when it comes to keeping your young girls in sport. A couple of years ago, to give a bit of insight, I became a nutrition and lifestyle coach, and I was, becoming more aware of what I was putting in my body, and I was questioning everything that I was putting in my body when it came to food. I was questioning, were, these onions organic, or, how much protein is in something. And the reality is, although I'm not a high performing athlete by any means, high performing athletes are really aware of their nutrition and supplements and what they're putting in their bodies. And one of the big things is, again, they know exactly how much protein, they know exactly how much carbs, they know, what impact that's having on their body when they consume it, and in what form. But there's other things that have an impact. And what we weren't questioning is what else we were putting in our bodies that was going to have an impact on us as well. And the reality is, and as I kind of touched on a few minutes ago, like period products, we're putting them in our body or putting them around a really sensitive part of our body. And a lot of these are washed with chlorine bleach. A lot of them contain up to 24 hormone disrupting chemicals and have, a lot of plastic. The average mainstream pad contains up to 90% plastic. So we put so much focus into what food we're putting in our body, where it's coming from, but we're not questioning something that we use every single month without fail and have been for a long time. So we really want to focus not just on what we're putting in our bodies from a nutritional point of view, but also what we're putting in our bodies when it comes to period care as well. With that, we have like a huge range of products to support our partners. As Christian mentioned, we have our Shelburne packs that we've given to be able to support players on and off the pitch. We supply everything from everyone from gyms, bars, restaurants, right up to enterprise size clients. And the reason for this is we feel so passionately about getting our toxin-free products into the hands of as many people as possible. And how we see it is, wherever you see toilet paper, there should be period care there as well. So that's where we really come in terms of quality and accessibility as well, getting these products in front of as many people as possible. And when we talk about sport, and particularly girls in sport, the shocking thing when it comes to sports and the menstrual cycle is a lot of girls are dropping out of sport when they hit puberty. 1 in 5 girls, as we can see there, stop playing sport between primary school and secondary school. And this is in comparison to 1 in 20 boys who drop out. So there's a direct correlation between girls dropping out of sport, getting their period, they get hairs on their legs, they hit puberty, they feel really, really uncomfortable. So as we can see there as well, 7 in 10 teenage girls actively avoid sport while on their period. So we want to make a difference. We want to change that. There are so many benefits, as we know, of playing sport. It's not even in just physical health, but so many emotional, social, and cognitive benefits as well. Things like learning resilience, learning teamwork, and a true sense of belonging. So it is so important from a physical point of view, but also in those other areas like that social and emotional benefits as well. So I'm delighted everyone's here today. I'm delighted that we're normalizing this conversation around girls and girls in sport and the menstrual cycle. And I'd love again to hear from everyone in the chat, in that how often is the menstrual cycle talked about in your team or in your work or in your sports club? And I'll give it a minute for everyone to find the chat again and to pop those answers in. Never, Karen. Interesting, is it? Never, sadly, Rob. Yeah, never, Derek. In my local club, never, says Aoife. If we're rarely, very rarely, if ever, want to help make it more mainstream. Thank you for that. That's brilliant, and very little and never. So even from the small sample size of what we have there, I work in occupational health and safety, and this is never discussed, John. And like it's mad. Oh, someone said when I was involved with Women's Game Weekly, that's really good. And then other people saying never mentioned, never mentioned. So it's crazy. We have a small sample size here, but one person has said that it's talked about weekly, and everyone else has said it's never, or only on teams where women are involved on the coaching team. So we're really proving the point that this conversation that we're having right now, and you guys giving up this time, is so important. And if I've one ask later on, it's to go and have a conversation about this. It's just so important, and we're the people in this room are the ones that are going to change how it's spoken about as well. So thank you everyone for getting involved in that. Before I hand it over to the incredible Shelburne team, we went through the menstrual cycle in the phases of the menstrual cycle in our last webinar, and we have a really good cheat sheet that we'll share that we can share with everyone. But if you want to scan this code right here on the screen, and we'll give it a minute to give everyone the opportunity to do so. You can get a link to download your cheat sheet and bring the help to bring menstrual health into that sporting conversation as well. And obviously it has a really really brilliant diagram here on the menstrual cycle, the different phases. So I know someone said in the chat they weren't confident on the different phases. This is definitely something that can help with that. So we'll put it again at the end. We'll put it up on the screen so people can take the QR code and the link. So with that, I'd love to hand it over to Shelburne to talk us through.
Yeah, thanks, Anya. So look, obviously, like I said earlier, I'm not an expert. I don't know all the ins and outs of the sciencey side, but I'll just give my perspective as a player and kind of growing up as that young player as well. So look, I think probably the best thing you could do for yourself and to train on your period is just to really get to know your body. And I'd say the best way to do that is to sort of track your cycle. And look, there's loads of apps that do. Me personally, I kind of have a Garmin fitness watch, and I use that to track all my sessions on the pitch. If I'm in the gym, it'll track that, my sleep, and then I can add my period into it as well. And look, like I said, not even the sciencey side, it's just so I know my symptoms of my body and how I'm going to feel. So there's probably a lot of people with similar kind of symptoms where it's, a day or two before I might have, a really low mood, or like my energy levels are really low, and like I always really get kind of like a big sugar craving, and just like no matter how much sugar I eat, it's like it goes into a black hole, and it's just you can't satisfy it. And I know that's quite a similar one as well. Like I always get a sore back. So like I said, not even to know the sciencey side behind your body, but just to recognize, these are the reasons why I'm getting these symptoms. And you can use that then to obviously with your training load. And I just find for me, it's like it just makes me be a lot kinder to myself. Like if I've trained, and obviously our sessions will get tracked, and if I haven't hit like the distance that I would normally cover, or as many sprints as I was normally cover, or was able to train as well as I normally am, if I didn't know and I didn't track my period to know that it was coming, I find like I could be very harsh on myself. And it's even wondering like, am I injured? Am I just not trying hard enough? Am I losing my fitness? But if I know, look, in a day or two, I'm going to get my period, my training session is not going to be as fully there as what it normally would be. And again, it just eases my peace of mind that I can be that much kinder to myself. And, I can not so much have an excuse, but it's like, these are the reasons why I'm not training as well as I normally would. So I would say I probably encourage all players to track their period just to get to know their body for that peace of mind. So, and then probably on a more practical side, you need to kind of choose what products work well for you. And that's obviously kind of a lot of trial and error. Like some players like to play with a tampon, some like a pad. Like there's times where I've worn both, that's obviously, down to getting to know your body as well, where it's like, if I'm on a much heavier day, do I need both? Do I need a heavier pad? Do I need a bigger tampon? All these things. So that's about getting to know your body as well, and probably a bit of trial and error. And even for, period friendly clothing where, a child is not wearing white shorts when she's coming up to maybe possibly going to get her period in the next couple of days. And even for me, like, comfortable stuff, like I always feel like my belly's a bit bloated, and I feel like I'm about 5 kilos heavier. Sometimes when I'm on my period, can't really move well. So I'll always just, again, be kind to myself and just wear some clothing that are probably a bit of a looser fit, not as tight on myself, and even then practical side of it. And God, I remember years ago when I was only young, and there was this match. It was Birmingham versus Liverpool. It was a women's game, and it was about 11 years ago now at this stage. And two players kind of went in for a tackle, and like one of the girls' tampon came out on the pitch. And I remember like social media wasn't big at the time, but like I remember seeing it everywhere on the internet, and it was like this girl was just being so kind of ridiculed for this, and it was like how embarrassing this is. And I was old enough, I suppose, but I remember it just terrified the life out of me that that was going to happen to me. And I even think like I think it was even on Soccer AM at the time, and like they were just laughing so much at this. And for me, so you can imagine like a young 14, 15-year-old girl even seeing that, and like I was terrified, and even still to this day, every time I'm playing in my period, that comes into my mind. I'm like, I hope that doesn't happen to me. And like it shouldn't even be shameful, it's just part of it. But like for me, and I know some people are trying to support their young girls, and that's probably a worry that they have. So I remember at the time I used to wear, I'd have a pad, and then I'd wear a pair of underwear, and then I'd have another pair of underwear on top just to be sure. And then I'd wear cycling shorts just because I was so afraid that that was going to happen to me. But like you can imagine that's not really comfortable to play in, like let alone walk around in. So obviously had to find some other kind of solution. So for now, for me, I just, you can kind of get these little hot pants, Nike do them, I'm sure other brands do them, where they're quite comfortable to play in. It's just hot pants. And look, if there's any young girl worried about that side of it, it'll just keep everything nice and tight, but while being comfortable to play in. So that's kind of what the comfort and the confidence is. It's getting the balance where you're really confident in what you're wearing, but also really comfortable. So look, that's probably a help for any young girl who might be embarrassed to say it, but probably help for any mummies or daddies out there who are shopping for their kids, coming into sport. And another practical side of it is just having painkillers. I would always have a few in my bag, and like for us, like we would always be encouraged for players to have their own, because like physios can't give you medicine. Basically they can't give you any sort of tablets around like that. So like I would imagine a lot of teams don't have doctors. We can get them if we have a doctor there, but that's probably what 1% of the teams that are playing. So encourage players to have their own painkillers in the bag. You just never know when they might need them. And like we were saying earlier about having a period pack in your bag, and maybe just, I know the club might even provide them for girls. You can encourage them to have their own, but you could create a little pad or a little pack for each girl where they get at the start of the season. It's like a little bag, and it's like a few pads, a few tampons, wipes, and whatever, and then they can just hold on to that then for the season, and they can top it up or put whatever they want in it. And even just to have it at all times, because look, like I was said, you can track your cycle, know your body inside out. And like it's happened so many times where a girl will go into the toilet before the game, and it's like, surprise, like here's your period a week early, and you've nothing prepared. So I just think to have something in your bag at all times is a big help for any young girl. Yeah, so that's really the players. And then I suppose the coaches, you can help this situation as well. And look, like I was saying, like, you don't have to know the exact science behind it, or how can I fully adapt training. But I just think for me, the biggest thing, if we can just normalize a conversation about it, and have a young girl just be able to come and say, it's the same as just saying, oh, I feel a bit off tonight, I have a headache. It should be just the same as that, where she can say, look, I feel a bit off tonight, I'm on my period. And it's just, that's okay, that's no problem. Whatever you need on the night, if you're feeling sick, you can step out. Or if you're feeling tired, you can come, and you can be a bounce player on the outside, whatever it is. But I just think if you just normalize it, it's just like, that's the biggest win for me that we can ever get. And like for us at Shelbourne, every week we'll be sent a questionnaire. It's just like a Google form, and our physio sends it to us, and it's just the usual. It's like, your recovery at the weekend after playing, how did you sleep, have you any injuries? One of the questions will always be, are you on your period? So again, it's just normalized straight away. Physios will know, coaches will know, and then like any staff will know as well. So it's all just done really quickly. It doesn't even have to be a conversation, but we just do it through a Google Doc form. And again, just creating a supportive environment that, like, I always feel like, so when I'm on my period training, I just know I'm a bit off and I'm not right, and sometimes I can get really frustrated with myself. So like as coaches, if you see that in your players and they're really frustrated, they're not training well, and from their questionnaire that they're on the period, it could even be just a conversation, how are you feeling today? How did you find your session? And they'll probably open up about it, or they might not, but just give them that support environment and say, look, we know you're not at 100% tonight, it's fine, you've done your best, it's nothing to be stressing about. And again, just encouraging the conversation around it. Just if a player does come to you, don't make a face about it, or don't tense up. Just leave it be. And I even remember like I was a young girl and I was on my period training and like my chest was like really sore, really tender. I'm sure a lot of girls would know the symptoms of it. And one of the drills that we were doing was, you had to run, ball was thrown, you take it on your chest and play it. And every time I done it, it was like agony on my chest. It was so sore, so tender. But I was just way too embarrassed. Like it didn't even cross my mind to just say, no, I'm really tender, I'm really sore. Is there any chance I could just head it back instead? But for me, it was just like, no, you can't ever bring that up. You can't say it. So again, just normalizing conversations, having no embarrassment about it. And then on the practical side, just having products available. Like for us at Shells, when we show up to our match in the dressing room, when we go to the toilet, there's always a little basket. It just has tampons and pads in it for anyone that needs it. And probably the one that's kind of, spoken about in a lot of the media and stuff is just having the dark shorts on match day. And you can see from our picture there that like we wear the same kits as the men, but you can see for that particular kit, the shorts were quite light, were like a silvery grey colour. So just for us, we just simply switched them to a navy. Because the last thing you want is a girl going into a match and she's worried about, am I going to get a period saying that? Is anything going to happen? So I just think you want to remove all sort of any discomfort going into a match and just have everyone at the biggest peace of mind you can. And I think another thing as well as a coach, just respect the privacy and comfort. And if you're 5-10 minutes into a session and a girl's, can I use the toilet? Can I go? And don't say, oh, we're only 5 minutes in here. You couldn't possibly have to go toilet already. Just if a girl wants to go to the toilet, you just leave her. If she wants to tell you why, she can. If not, just respect the privacy if she wants it. But I wouldn't question any girl who, wants to go to the toilet during a session. Then another practical one, and I'm not sure what way the kit works with the players, but whether they bring their own shorts, if there's just one pair per player. I think I'd always just have a spare pair thrown in just in case. And even if they are dark and it's fine, you can't see the stain, but look, a girl's not going to want to run around if there's blood on her shorts. So I just think no harm having one or two spare pairs, either in the dressing room, in your whatever bag you use, if you have them in your car, whatever. But it's probably a handy one to have. And I think the one that's probably the most, I would say, missing and what I have never seen. And look, I've played in stadiums all around Ireland, and I would say probably 95% there's no bin actually in the toilet. And it's always like there's always a bin in the dressing room, which is fine, but there's a lot of girls who are young, and if they go into a toilet and have to change themselves or put on a product, like they don't want to have to walk out, with their used products in their hand and having to go find the bin that's in the middle of the dressing room for everyone to look at. So it's probably the one that I would say is most overlooked. Look, it's great having a bin. We all need a bin, but sometimes you just have it in the toilet as well. That's a big peace of mind, like ease of mind for a lot of young girls, because you could nearly turn someone off having to like walk into the middle of a dressing room and put their used tampon or used pad in a bin. They just might not even do it. So, but if it's in the toilet, it's completely private and a lot more ease of mind for girls. So look, that's my part of it. Again, I don't know sciencey stuff. I don't know how to adapt train and all that, but that's for me as a player what I've learned over the years, and I think it's probably more practical tips for coaches and parents of young players.
Excellent, Rachel. Thank you so much. That was absolutely brilliant and like amazing insight as well. And we had Amy in the chat mentioning as well about the bin, like exactly the same as you were saying as well, like that there was no bin there. And then Sean mentioned there saying spare shorts, excellent tip as well. Like it's those really practical tips, that like will have such an impact. So thank you so much. That was brilliant. Octavia, are you there?
Yeah.
Sorry.
Can you hear me? Yeah, perfect.
Yeah, perfect.
Okay, so guys, I'm going to take a deeper dive, like I said, into the periodization model and how we can adapt the gym sessions and the pitch sessions within the menstrual cycle. So as you can see there on the screen, there's 4 different phases. The first phase will be the period. So that's when the initial bleeding starts. You go into your follicular phase, which could last up to 14 days. Your ovulation phase is the third one. I'll be obviously talking a bit more about adaptation in the next slide. And then the last one is the luteal phase, which would go up to 28 days. If you want to go on to the next slide there, please. Yeah, so 4-week periodization model, like I mentioned in the last webinar briefly, is how I would adapt the menstrual cycle to this. So it's really important to understand that the menstrual cycle aligns with the 4-week periodization model. So we don't actually change everything just for the menstrual cycle. We would individualize things within the 4-week blocks. So for the first week there, we'd have our menstrual phase, initial bleeding starts. The focus would be on movement quality, techniques, and base strengths. In the gym, we'd look at tempo lifts, core stability movements, and just movement prep in general, as we'll be peaking towards our week 3. Our goal will be to build foundation after the deload for progression. So during this phase, strength and power outputs can be slightly lower. RPE trends tend to be high. So RPE is the rate of perceived exertion. So like Rachel mentioned, some teams would use Google Docs to kind of track how you are during that stage. So the RPE trend phase that I use will be the Borg cycle, which is a 1 to 10 scale. So 1, you'd be feeling really low, and then 10 will be you're feeling great. So that's kind of how I would look at this with my players. That would then lead us into the follicular phase. So for this, controlled overloads and increased intensity and volume. So your RPE at this stage would be feeling a bit moderate. So you'd be a bit better to increase your load then. Strength progressions and moderate volume load is what we would focus on. And the goal is to adapt safely and prepare for a high load. Our ovulation phase, which is what I would call the peak phase, would be in week 3. That's when we would have our max intensity and power expression. So around in the 3rd week, athletes generally are feeling really good, really sharp, and really strong. This is when we would introduce heavy strengths, speed, and reactive plyometrics. And our goal would be to hit peak outputs. And for the last phase, which is the luteal phase, this is when it would be just before the period. So players are feeling a little bit lower, their sleep isn't as good, their recovery might take a bit longer. So the focus would be recovery and mobility. This is when we would kind of increase our mobility sessions. So throughout the menstrual, follicular, and ovulation phase, we could have 2 mobility sessions per week. During the luteal phase, we would have 3. And then our goal would be to consolidate gains before the next block. So I'm just going to touch on that a bit more now. So menstrual phase, as you can see, all of the 4 weeks there have a consistent session plan, which would include our hinge movement and our squat movements. So our squat movements would be a trap bar deadlift. The reason why I'm using this as an example for this one is because it's a bit lighter on the back. Dumbbell bench press in the menstrual phase, I'll outline the differences in a moment. Then we would have our hinge, which would be a RDL, a Bosch hold, which would be a hamstring hold, and then dead bugs, which is for your core stability. If you don't know these exercises, that's okay. But again, we kind of keep the same breakdown for it. So we would have our squat movement, we would have a hinge movement, we would have a core movement, and an isometric. I would introduce weight training to teenage girls about under 15s. Now, this isn't pumping iron and really heavy weights. It's just kind of introducing them to the low bars that are 5 kilos, 8 kilos. I think it's really important from an under 14s perspective to even have girls in the gym and just doing bodyweight squats, bodyweight lunges. It's really important that we get the movement right before we go and increase in loads. So this year was my first year at Shelburne. With the under 17s, we didn't really focus on a lot of weight. We focused on movements. And then as we progressed onwards, we went into more weights because, again, I think the most important thing is if they're moving correctly, then you would increase the load. So moving into the follicular phase, if you want to look side by side, the menstrual and follicular phase, you can see the main difference there would be the bench press. So dumbbell bench press, we're going to a barbell bench press. Why that is because the menstrual phase, we're getting ready to increase our load. Players around week 2 should feel slightly better. I will show you a graph on the second slide after that to match that. So that's why we're able to increase our volume, like I mentioned in the first one. Then we have our RDLs, which increase a whole set. The reason why the set increases, again, is because training readiness will be better and the players are feeling sharper. Now, with that being said, of course, some weeks for certain individuals, their period might be a little bit longer, then we won't increase the volume. Again, like I mentioned, we kind of put the menstrual cycle on top of the 4-week periodization plan. So again, if we need to individualize, that's fine. There's been weeks where I haven't peaked because, again, it's normal. And especially with the training schedules and match demands, you might have an important match on the weekend. You don't want to peak that week because you don't want an increase of an injury rate. Or for instance, deload weeks, which is the luteal phase, which is week 4. There was times where I didn't deload until week 5 or 6 because, for instance, there'd be a 2-week break and players are feeling sharp. As long as players feel good and you get the feedback from them, you're able to still progress onwards with them. But it's important to note that this will all be individualized within the 4-week periodization plan. For our ovulation phase, that's where it kind of changes a little bit. We have a bit more power movement. So a counter movement jump, 3 sets by 3 reps. Why we keep it kind of low is because we're peaking in that week. During the ovulation phase, there's a really high risk of an ACL injury, which is why we focus on the loading and landing mechanics. So we don't want to overstimulate the neuromuscular system, but we still want to get the higher demands of that. Med ball scoop throw, again, it will be rotational movements working on power. Again, keeping the sets really low, but the weight will be slightly heavier because we are in our peak. Bench press remains the same. B stance RDLs, we drop down to 2 sets. The reasoning is because if the weight goes up, our sets will go down. Then we go from a single leg Bosch hold to a hamstring hold. This could be a glute bridge hold, just to ensure that we're using isometrics throughout peak. If anyone isn't familiar with isometrics, all it is basically a movement that you're holding for 20 to 15 seconds. What that does, it doesn't stimulate the neuromuscular system as much, but it still exerts the peak output. So you're not really putting as much load onto an athlete as you would. Then we have dead bugs. The reason that we have plates in this is because it is a peak week. And then that brings us into our last phase, which is the luteal phase. This is when players would be leading up to their period. So our intensity would go down as the RP rate would be slightly higher for the athletes. So we would go back to low level pogos after we did from the counter movement jumps. Our trap bar deadlifts, I still like to keep them in because, again, you don't want to completely change the whole exercise breakdown. You just modify the sets and reps because of the period coming up. Then the bench press will go down a set along with the B stance RDLs, along with the dead bugs. Then next slide, please. So yeah, like I mentioned in the last slide, we kind of went through certain exercises. Again, if you use different exercises, that's fine. Different sets and reps, it's okay, as long as you modify it for an individual within. I find that the best way to do it, looking back at it, is week 1, you just come out of your period, so you're focusing on movement quality, you still want some weight there. Week 2, if players are feeling good after week 1, progress slightly, whether that's sets, reps, or weight. For me, week 3, best week to peak because their neuromuscular system is ready for that high load and high intensity. And then for week 4, as the period is coming up, you reduce the load. So that's kind of simplifying it as we've seen with the exercises. And then for the last slide here, for me, this is probably the most important one. You know, Rachel has touched on it and Kristen will be touching on it as well. Recovery, performance, and trust, they all work like 3 gears. When the recovery is good, the players are feeling good. Their performance will be better. When their performance is good, they're going to believe more in the team. They're going to be happier. And when the trust is good, the communication is high. And when the communication is high, everything works really well. So for myself, from an S&C perspective, having those chats, checking in on players, how they're feeling. You know, if someone isn't feeling too good, you don't need to increase the weight. Reassure them it's okay. This is not going to, slow down your progress. Like I mentioned in the last webinar, the goal at Shelbourne isn't to get players ready for Saturday. It's to keep them going for a long-term, environment, get them to thrive in a senior environment, get them used to their menstrual cycle on top of their periodization. So again, for me, this is the most important slide. So I'll pass you on to Kristen now.
All right. From a coaching perspective, a big part of what I'd be looking at is creating a healthy environment. So if we believe that growth occurs outside of our comfort zone, then you have to create an environment where the players first feel comfortable to make mistakes so that when they're making those mistakes, they're learning from them and they're growing, and you're effectively going to push them outside of their comfort zone. But if they're not comfortable from the start to do that, it's just not going to happen. It also requires a lot of vulnerability on the player's end because you're asking questions and recognizing that they might not get it right immediately, but they can see the merit to doing something. Learning is going to involve failing, And giving them the opportunity to do that in like a healthy and safe environment makes it less scary for them to test their comfort zone and ultimately expand their comfort zone so that what was once uncomfortable will then become comfortable. It's not to say that you're going to consistently reward your players who are turning the ball over in the same manner, but you might ask them what their objective is and why they're doing something, and then they have to answer that question. You're going to be empowering their decision-making aligned to what your own team's cultures and objectives are, and it's the players who have to make the decisions when they're on the pitch anyways. So when you're empowering them to do that, like you're saying to them, hey, I trust you. This is all the information that you have. So you go ahead and make the decision that's best suited and just be able to answer for it. So from there, they're going to feel like they take a bit of ownership. Even though we're the coaches in the environment, it's still an environment for them too. Like if we don't have players, there's no one for us to coach. So we have to have that trust with the players so that they're feeling comfortable to express themselves. Yeah, you can move on to the next one. When you have to get to know your players really well, and it does take a bit of time as well. So getting to know your players can involve even just knowing how to motivate them. So some players, there's even players in my own squad who will respond really well to being sat. And then their next match, they're like the hardest player to go against on the pitch. It's not something we like doing, but some of them respond really well to that, where another player might spiral out of control given the exact same circumstances. So getting to know your players is paramount to how you build that relationship, because they're not all going to respond the same. There's some players that I coach who like being yelled at. I don't like being that coach. So again, it's just meeting the players on their level and what they need. Honesty and transparency has always been critical for me. And when I came in to a more leadership role at Shells, that was one of the first things that I took on. And it was telling players like, hey, here's where you're falling short, but here's where I see that you add a lot to our team. So they knew where they were valued. They knew what they did exceptionally well. They knew what they did better than other players, not only in our own club, but that they were going against. But then they also were like, right, okay, this is what I can improve on. And maybe that's the difference between me being a 19s player and a senior player. Or maybe it's the difference between me getting called into an international squad. Whatever it is, if you can give them that honesty and transparency, and they, again, are feeling comfortable to then test themselves and continue to improve, they're going to listen a lot more to what you're saying, and they're going to like give a bit of better feedback on themselves as well. And accountability is something that I'm like a big believer in. So that comes down to my player reviews and the honesty and transparency. But it's also been me showing up to a training session being like, hey, I apologize for that activity or that drill. I don't think it met our targets. And once I can do that, then the player's like, all right, I can do that too. Like I can be accountable. I can say that this wasn't good enough. And sometimes it's just them being like, I'm actually just not at my best right now. I would say to every one of my players in every environment that I've coached in, if you are not at your best, and this kind of goes into what Rachel was saying as well, if you're not into your best, just let me know. Let me hold you accountable to the standard that you can give on the day. If 100% is not what you can give, but 70% of your ability is what you can give, then I know that. Whether you're coming back from being sick, you're run down, jet lagged, or you're on your like at a different stage of your cycle, whatever that is, just let me know and I can manage my own expectations. The rest of us know as well. We had a player this season who had to very unfortunately, surprisingly put her dog down. And then we had a match the next day. Knowing that about her was like, right, she's gonna make some errors. We definitely cannot get on to her about it. Like she's having a really tough time with this. So knowing that, it just kind of helped us know what we could do with her or like how we can communicate to her. And also, and then at the end of it, be like, how are you doing? How's everything? So that she wasn't like going through probably one of the most traumatic times of her life up to this point, to then getting yelled at in one of her favorite environments as well. You can move on to the next one. So with cycle awareness, for any reason that a player isn't feeling their best, I just want to know. So that's always going to be the case. And as Rachel said, at a senior level, they do like the reviews with the physio, I think, to say where they are in their cycle. Ultimately, it just comes down to me asking my players how they're feeling. And if I know that they're around their cycle, like one of my more recent coaching experiences, I knew where my players were because the two players that I was most responsible for, one's cycle was a week before mine and the other one's was a week after mine. So I kind of always knew where we were, but I could ask more probing questions about where they were, how they were feeling, be like, how are they, instead of just a generic, how are you today? It might be, how are the hamstrings? How's the back? Did you guys sleep okay? Like the questions that they might be answering to our physio, but I might not get that information. It's the questions that I'm asking them to see where they're at. And some days they would be in training and they'd be a little bit more moany or argumentative, and you kind of take it on the chin. Like, I know I cared a lot about the players. I know they enjoyed the training. So it's just, okay, this is where they're at. What I might do is reduce the reps, or I might have them do something that I know they're going to do well today that feels a little bit challenging, but they're always pretty good at, and it'll help build their confidence. Whatever it is, to kind of get a smile on their face. And again, make them comfortable to then be uncomfortable later. I might have otherwise planned a more demanding session that would have required more running or more movements or up and down, whatever it is. But on that particular day, if the players aren't going to be able to give you their best, no one's going to be happy leaving that session. Like, they're not going to be happy. Myself as a coach, we probably haven't met the objectives. And why would I have done that? Just for myself? Like, if they're not getting anything out of it, then what am I getting out of it as a coach? Nobody's really winning in that. So it's just really important to know where your players are at and be able to have those conversations. The last bits for the conversations are to try and use positive language, of course. For, as mentioned, the period packs have been really helpful for us because it hasn't required a whole lot of conversations. It's just like, hey, if you need it, it's here. Now, I know I'm very lucky. I work with under 19 girls. So some of them are like, they're adults effectively. So they're a little bit more in control and a little bit more comfortable in those conversations. But all the same, it's just like, I'm an ally. Here's anything that you need. If there's anything else you require, just let me know. I probably wouldn't be giving them painkillers because I think that's probably teetering on the unprofessional side. But like, I definitely have them for myself in my car and in my bag all the time. So making sure that discretion is key as well, that we're not just like yelling across the pitch, hey, we're not wearing white today because the girls are on their period. Like, that's, no one's going to feel good about that. Reading the room, whether you have senior or junior players, Rachel's kind of indicated as well, your senior players will probably be a bit more open about where they are on their cycle. And if it's affecting them, your junior players may not. And your junior players, as I had said earlier, might not know when their period's coming or how it is going to affect them either. Like, genuinely, as a teenager, I knew the week after my period that I wasn't going to get it then. But after that, I was kind of topsy-turvy. I really didn't know. It could have shown up in another 2 weeks. It could have shown up in another 3 weeks. It could have shown up like right then. I had no idea. So it's it wouldn't have been the most consistent. And I don't think my experience was alone based on my conversations with my own friends as well. Avoiding the slang as well, whether it's intentional or not, a lot of the slang has a negative connotation, and especially with younger players, that can be really harmful. If they're not feeling like they can be vulnerable in their environment, then that slang is likely only to make them more reserved.
Brilliant, Christian. Thank you so much. I feel like there's so many takeaways that we can take away from today, but a couple of ones that were touched on there in like around knowledge being power, particularly Octavia, you were providing us with so many examples of this, like adapting your training around the menstrual cycle and then building that foundation and structure for players as well. Education being key to this as well. I think everyone kind of touched on this, but obviously understanding the cycle, and then that in turn helps to break the stigma and open up those conversations. I think Rachel and Christian, you both were emphasizing the importance of communication and like knowing the cycle and creating a safe space for players to speak. And like having both sides from like a player's perspective, obviously, and then having a coach's perspective as well is just really beneficial. And then obviously like coaches can lead change. We talked a lot around like that open dialogue, as I've mentioned, and how to empower players. Kristen, I was laughing when you were saying about, some players like to be yelled at. I'm like, I would hate that. But like I totally understand. Like it's the same in different environments. Some people like to be pushed, some don't. So really having that open dialogue is so important to empower your players and to build that confidence. And then again, like supporting is strength. So we talked a lot around, those small actions. Rachel, you mentioned around, we talked about bins and then having spare shorts, those little things that can have, such a big impact. Obviously, our period pack, you all mentioned, was so good as well. And then like using the right language, all really, really important. So just amazing takeaways. I'm so glad we have a recording of this as well. So as I mentioned at the beginning as well, and obviously Octavia went into the menstrual cycle in more detail there through training too. But this is a really helpful resource if anyone wants to get the QR code and download it, the cheat sheet, just so that you have it. Good idea is even you could pin it up in clubs or dressing rooms again to like normalize the conversation. Kristen, I think you were saying when the packs are just there, you don't have to do much, like people understand, you know. So again, you could pin this up somewhere, you know, for education purposes as well. That might be a nice idea. Um, so yeah, and just a massive thank you. I'm gonna thank everyone and then open the floor to questions, but particularly obviously to Shelburne, to Kristen, Rachel, and Octavia as well. Your knowledge is invaluable. So opening up this conversation, particularly with sport, we saw the stats, you know, of how many girls drop out of school of sport. So what you're doing is incredible and helping us to open up this conversation. It's a partnership we're so proud of. So thank you. From a Riley perspective, you can find us in many different places. Please do reach out to us, LinkedIn or email. We're always happy to hear feedback or answer any more questions. But I'll leave it there and I'll look at the chat now and open up any questions that people have. We're really happy to answer them. I'm sure it's not going to be to me, it's going to be to the team here, but I'm happy to answer any questions that anyone has. Lucy asked earlier, how can we as coaches best help players if they have irregular periods? I think anyone could answer that, maybe yourself, Kristen, or Rachel or Octavia, any of you really.
I'd still come back to any time that you can just get a gauge on how they're feeling, because like if they have an irregular period and they're potentially, going through the symptoms, every 3 weeks and then up to 2 weeks or whatever it is, like kind of like what Rachel had said earlier, if they're not feeling well, you'd have to adapt for that. So it's again having that healthy environment for a player to be like, I just don't know what's happening. Like I feel really tired. I'm not feeling great. Like it's just kind of going down to that. Like we are not medical professionals, or like I'm not that sciencey to know like what that's going to look like for that particular individual. But I know that if one of my players isn't going to be performing her best or isn't feeling great, then I still want her to be a part of the environment. I still want her to feel welcome, and I don't want her to be overwhelmed and feel like she's failing or feel like she's out of control because of something that she genuinely can't control. Like I want her to still feel that she's welcome there and to kind of adapt so that she can be successful and feel confident, and then just take better charge of how that session's going.
Brilliant. Really good. I think we've time for another question, and I know someone put one up here as well. Do you think because you are female, the players responded better to you, or you could speak more freely to them? I suppose anyone could answer that, any of the three of you.
I think for me, like obviously being involved in women's football and as a player, like I've always had male coaches involved, which look is completely fine. So I just think, it has to be both. I think a player should be as comfortable going to a man as she is a woman. Obviously, a woman would probably maybe understand a bit more. Like she's obviously had the same symptoms, know what it feels like. So maybe on that side, it's probably a bit easier for a girl to go to a female. But like there is a lot of teams or players out there who will have male coaches. So for me, it'd just be like it's just the person you're going to. It doesn't have to be female, it doesn't have to be male. Or, if a young girl goes to a male coach and she says, look, I have my period, and he goes, oh no, go tell female coach. Like that's just where we don't want to be. I think it just needs to be comfortable with both. But look, obviously the female will probably understand a bit more, maybe a bit more empathetic to know the kind of symptoms and the pain that you go through. But for me, I just think if we could ever get to a stage where it's the young girl doesn't feel any sort of fear going to a male to say it, and that's probably on the males as well to just be so open about it. And if they do come, it's not the body tenses or you make a face or I don't know anything about that. Like just let them come to you. And for me, if you could ever get to that stage, that would be like one of the biggest wins that you can ever have with this kind of topic.
I love that, Rachel. And it kind of builds on like why we're all here today as well, in like an effort to open up that conversation, in an effort to educate. And Christian went through that like positive language to be using as well. You're right, like not to be like tensing up if someone comes, or like that we can all have this conversation really openly. It's definitely what we're all here for. So I love that. Thank you so much. I'm conscious that we've run over time. I feel like we could have been here all day, but I just want to say a massive thank you to you guys for joining us, to everyone for joining us and really driving this conversation. And if anyone has any more questions, I'm sure the team will be more than happy to help answer those questions. And me myself, if anyone wants to reach out to myself or the Riley team, we're more than happy to answer questions too. As we mentioned, we'll follow up with everyone with an email, and we'll have the recording as well. But a massive thank you. And you can see in all these comments, thank you so much. It was brilliant, top class. So a massive thank you to Shelbourne Football Club, to Kristen, Rachel, and Octavia for joining us. Amazing. Thank you all so much.